Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Don't Like My Dog. How about 5k plus littering fine? So, I live in a new neighborhood where a lot of the houses are still being built. The construction company is good quality, but they just throw their trash everywhere. The city doesn't care, unless it ends up on someone else's property, and it has many times. Every couple of weeks, my dad and I go out and pick up whatever has blown onto our property, no complaints. In addition, they leave rusty nails, leftover wood materials just on the sidewalk. So, a couple weeks ago our builder, the guy in charge of all the construction projects, actually moves in a couple houses down. I'm walking my dog, who decides he's going to poop on the builder's neighbor's lawn. As I'm picking his poop up, the builder comes over and starts berating me, saying things like dog pee kills grass, it wasn't pee, it was poo, that I had already picked up at this point. I better not see him do that again, etc. Going on and on about his neighbor's precious lawn, acting as if he owned it. A grown 50-plus man lecturing a teenage girl about her dog. I just said okay, and left, red face, and fuming inside. I hate conflict, and I'm super introverted and socially anxious. I was done with picking up the stupid trash that blew over from his building projects, and I reported it. I recently found out, weeks after reporting it, that he has been forced to get an additional crew to clean up or pay his own guys overtime to clean up, or else he'd face a hefty littering fine, 5k plus. I know for a builder this is minuscule compared to how much he makes by selling each house, but it's a victory for me. The next one is titled, Prove I Returned the Car Before 5. Okay, catch. Years ago I drove a tow truck and we delivered a lot of cars to dealers. One little dealership was notorious for having jerks working there. It was like all the high school bullies got back together and opened a car lot. Got a call on a Friday after lunch, from a client asking me to deliver a car to the dealership, and they had to have it before 5 p.m., or they didn't have to pay for it. And by pay for it, I mean the car and the tow bill. This would be no problem, the car was a couple of blocks from me and the dealer was about a mile away. I went and hooked the car and headed to the dealer. It was 3:30 p.m. when I left my office. I get to the dealership and go in to find someone to sign for it. No one would sign, they told me to just park it around back. Knowing what jerks these guys were, no way was I going to leave it there without being able to prove they got it before 5. I talked to the new car manager, used car manager, service manager, and finance manager. No one would sign for it, and they were taunting me, almost looking for a fight. Okay. I dropped the car and drove it up to their front doors, got out and locked it, backed up and looked at the crew inside laughing. I backed up another couple of steps and threw the keys onto their roof. They lost their crap. I waved and left. I was back in my office in less than 5 minutes. By this time, it's about 4:45 p.m. I walk in and my boss was on the phone and laughing. He called me right into his office and put the call on speaker. Our client was on the phone, as was the GM from the dealer. The GM was a lunatic about his showroom being blocked by the car and me tossing the keys on the roof. My client and boss knew these guys were jerks and wanted to know what happened. I told them no one would sign for the car and it had to be there before 5 o'clock. GM said right. I said, so it's before 5 and you're calling to complain the car is blocking your showroom? GM yes. At this point, my boss, the client, Mike, and I were all laughing hysterically. The GM got madder until I could catch my breath and call his crew out for not signing for it. They were going to say the car got there after 5 so they didn't have to pay if I didn't have proof of delivery. That's kind of hard to do now because the GM was on the phone at 4:45 complaining about the car on his lot. That dealer treated their customers the same way they tried to treat me. Less than 2 years later, the building was a mattress store. Folks. This was in 1981-1982. Pre-cell phones. The next one is titled, Bully Me for Swimming in My Own Pool? Check out my thighs. So this is more of an annual revenge thing. About 5 years ago a greedy councilman put up 3 two-story apartments next door to our house. One of these has a direct view of our pool area and a grouchy woman and her husband moved into it. Anyhow, as we have done in the 15 summers before they got there, we all went for an afternoon swim. The woman was on her balcony and made a huge dramatic fuss about going back inside and closing her curtains. She then screeched at her husband when he tried to go outside. It's not like we were indecent or anything, just in our swimsuits. We laughed about it and continued having a nice afternoon at the pool while she roasted inside. A few days went by and I decided it was too hot to be inside and went for a dip. I was in the middle of uni and this was the only time I'd leave the house between assignments and tests. Now, I do not have a body that stops traffic. I am a regular, plump human whose Dorito-loving habits have begun to show around the lower body area. I take off my sarong and jump into the pool. After a few minutes, I sense someone watching me, look up and find a man on the balcony smoking and staring right at me. I make a bit of an aggressive "what" gesture and he scurries back inside, only to return with the woman in tow. The conversation went something along the lines of, "Excuse me? Could you not swim when my son is out here smoking? He just lost his job and this is the time he'd normally smoke, and you're out here naked and distracting him. Me, he's the age of my dad. He can smoke on your front balcony. And I've lived here for, at the time, 15 years, so you can't blame me for being here, naked. Which I'm not, I'm swimming. I'm just asking you to be considerate, okay?" At this point, the grown man baby was looking smug. Me, "If you don't like it then move." And I continued swimming. They stood there for another 5 minutes before once again going inside and closing the sliding patio doors and curtains. Also, I was not naked or indecent. I wear full swimsuits because I'm a little insecure about my belly, see paragraph about the Doritos. I told my parents and the next day my mum joined me in the pool to show them, and I quote, "what real traumatizing thighs look like." But that got me thinking though. I could make their summers a living hell if closing all their curtains was how they'd go about seeing us in the pool. So now every summer, weather permitting, I go out and flash my thighs for a few hours in the afternoon and have them roast up in their apartment. It's been 5 years of this and I will continue doing this until the day I leave home. The next one is titled, "Dependers and Parking in Army Housing." I was stationed in Germany. The housing for married soldiers is multi-story apartments that were never prepared for the multi-car family. Parking is a free-for-all but each stairwell usually informally agrees to spots. If you don't live in that block you don't know. For those that don't know, a depender is a derogatory term for a military spouse that predates the modern-day Karen. Definitely in the same genus or family. So early in the day I drive a few blocks over to check on a subordinate that's not well. It's well before the end of the day and most spots are empty. I park and walk up the 4 flights of stairs. We talk for about 20 minutes and discuss an appointment I'm taking him to early the next morning. His family has 1 car and his wife is taking the kids somewhere else. I leave and begin walking down the stairs only to pass a lady giving me the dirtiest look I've ever received. I shrug and walk out the main door to see a car double parked behind mine. I hear a door in the stairwell slam and decide to walk back up the stairs. I ask my soldier if he knows the owner and explain my previous encounter. He looks out the window and exhaled deeply. "Oh hell, that's Staff Sergeant Alvarez's wife. She's a hothead. She lives just below me. If you're nice about it I'll move her car quickly." Jones, I can't imagine any scenario that involves me doing that. I walked back to work, finished the day and walked home. At about 9 he called me and said the car was still there and asked if I wanted him to say something. I told him not to worry. I'd see him in the morning with my other car. I got up at 4:30 and called the MP station and described the double-parked abandoned car. Had a nice breakfast. I arrived at his place at about 5:15. There was now a ticket on her car. We spent a long day at another base for his appointment. Got back around 7. Her car was now moved. He asked if I wanted him to drive my other car back over to my housing area. Nope, my wife is out of town. I'll come pick it up this weekend. At no point was I worried about vandalism. There are generally 2 types of cars overseas service members have. New, high-interest loan, brought from the States, trouble to park and repair. Barracks cars. Cheap, a new owner almost every year. May have been okay a decade ago. will be driven into the ground until the final owner gives up and junks it. The next one is titled, Sharing is Caring, and Karen Ain't Caring. One day, I was walking through City Market with my mum, the quiet buzzing of the lights only slightly annoying. All seemed well, and I decided to get one of the sample cookies from the back. Seems perfectly normal, right? So, I grabbed my cookie, which happened to be the last non-burnt one, as another family is coming into the back aisle. I'm not a particularly social person, so I started to walk away. This family consisted of a mother and a son, the son being maybe 5 or 6 years old by my estimates, wearing a vibrant and disgusting shade of yellow. The mum had a typical Karen haircut and a bland red-colored sweater on over a bright white shirt and brand new-looking skinny jeans. That didn't sound like a good time to me. They realize that there aren't any more non-burnt cookies, which, in my opinion, shouldn't be a problem. Cookies are cookies, especially free ones. The child wails horrifically, and notices that my cookie, that I haven't yet taken a bite out of, wasn't burnt. Wonderful observation skills, little Timmy. The mum approaches me and asks in a sickly sweet tone, one you can tell is obviously faked, if I would mind giving my cookie to her kid. I wasn't sure if the tone was from her having a headache from dealing with her kid or if she wasn't a nice person. But seeing as the kid was young, I chose to be nice, and broke my cookie in half, offering one of the halves to the kid, because I wasn't about to miss out on eating my cookie, nor was I about to go grab another one, as I felt it would just be rude to the next people. The kid looked confused at this, which immediately felt off. The mum's face contorted from nice to confused to offended very quickly. As if not offering the entire cookie had somehow forsaken her entire family, and she stared at me like I was going to sacrifice a goat in order to curse them. I, naturally, was confused, and realizing what was happening a bit too late, backed away and tried walking away. The lady placed her hand on my shoulder, preventing me from walking away. I was maybe 12 at the time, so was small boy. She held out her other hand, as if expecting me to just hand my cookie away. Let me once again state that I had tried to share, but Karen and her little hellspawn don't seem to understand the concept of sharing, evident by the atrocious wailing the child was releasing from the depths of the underworld itself. I hate the sounds of children crying. I managed to pull away from the iron grasp from this lady, and speed walked away. She marched up to me and tried to take the cookie from me. Before she could, a light bulb flickered on, before bursting in my head from the excitement to see the next levels of rage and profanities my plan was about to induce. I stuffed the entire cookie in my mouth. Now, these cookies were fairly big, bigger than the basic sugar cookies they usually give, so my mouth was stuffed. For a moment, Karen and her child are silent, stunned at what they had just witnessed. 10 seconds later, the gates of hell are ripped from their hinges. Karen exploded at me, screeching profanities at me, many of which I surprisingly hadn't heard before. I stood there, the smuggest grin on my little face, as I slowly chewed on the cookie, continuing to rub salt in the wound, until the profanities turned into indiscernible noises. Was it wrong of me to do so? Probably. Do I regret doing so? Absolutely not. After maybe 3 minutes of random sounds ejecting from the deep, dark chasm this woman produced, she stopped to take a breath. I had swallowed the cookie by now, and was getting tired of listening to the white noise this lady was projecting, so I began to walk away. "I'm not done with you," she yelled after me. Obviously, I chose to ignore her at this point, as I was just done with her. As soon as I was out of the aisle, I booked it back to my mum and continued on like nothing had happened. The next one is titled, She Kept Stealing My Washing Powder So I Gave Her Dye. I don't mind when my roommates borrow my stuff. We've all been there. All I ask is that they replace what they take. You drink my milk? Just buy me a new milk. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, my roommate doesn't seem to get this. She keeps taking my stuff, and when I ask her to please replace everything she takes, she'll buy one new thing and forget to do it the next time despite having more money than me. I finally snapped when I wanted to wash my clothes but only found an empty box that used to contain my washing powder. I don't buy fancy or expensive stuff, and I don't care about brands. After using the last of my powder a week earlier, she could literally have bought the cheapest no-brand powder in the world and I would have been fine. I just snapped. I had told her over and over to not use my washing powder if she wasn't going to replace it, and I just had enough. I bought a new box of washing powder, some Dylan machine dye, mixed it with a bit of the washing powder and dumped it into the old box. When the dye is dry, it looks like washing powder, especially if you're not expecting it. I took my new box of washing powder to my room and waited. A week later I came home from work and saw her laundry hanging outside, all with a mysterious pink color. She stomped up to me and demanded to know what I had done. I told her I was going to dye my own clothes and someone had told me the shade would be lighter if I mixed it with powder, lie. Then asked her why she had used it when it had clearly been in a box with my name on it when I had told her not to use it because she never replaced it. I don't think she believed me, but she finally got the message. She almost never takes my stuff, and when she does, she's quick to replace it. The next one is titled, My Boyfriend Organized a Sting Operation Against the Guy Who Scammed His Sister. T, 23, is my boyfriend. He has a sister, G, 26, who lives in Bogotá, Colombia. G and her baby girl live in quite an impoverished part of town, about 2 hours with public transport from the city center. Recently, G and the father of her child decided to buy a plot of land, with the hope of eventually building a house for themselves. They talked to this estate agent, and paid him almost all of their savings, in cash. T told me it's not uncommon for more impoverished people in Colombia not to use banks or have bank accounts. After they paid him the money, the guy stopped replying to their calls or messages and started ghosting them. Because of which, they started digging into him and discovered that this guy has loads of fake profiles on Facebook and lots of properties and plots of land that he's claiming are his to sell. They felt hopeless after discovering this. It dawned on them that they lost a ton of money, all their savings. This was their hope at a fresh start. Hearing this, R told her that he'd help them out. He took an old unused Facebook profile he had and changed the name on it. By replacing his profile picture, he made himself look like new money profile picture in front of a pool, a big house and fancy cars in the background. He also bought a new SIM card and got in touch with this guy. He pretended to be interested in purchasing a property, and they agreed to meet. T told me the guy was quite trusting and naive himself, buying all of R's crap about his wealth and his desire to buy a house. They agreed on a property R was to put a deposit on, and so T asked for his bank account to make the transaction. The guy was like, I'm having troubles with the bank, I'd much rather we do this with cash. So, T told him he could only give him a few thousands through cash, and not the full amount. They had agreed to meet yesterday in front of his letting agency. Instead, T called the police. He arranged that they'd be nearby with his sister and her partner. Just in case, T put some heavy branches in his backpack, giving the illusion that it had a lot of cash inside. On the day, T told the guy, I'm here, but I can't see you, send me your live location. So the other guy did, which T forwarded to his sister, who was with the police at that time. As the guy was talking to T on the phone, the police and his sister could hear his every word. T finally met the conman outside the agency, who was nervously looking around to make sure they were alone. It was at that moment that the police jumped in and caught him. They discover 9 fake IDs on him, as well as hundreds of pages of counterfeit property ownership, similar to the ones that T's sister G was given. As they were arresting him, he tried to plead and even attempted to bribe the police, who luckily wasn't having any of it. We don't know yet if this story will have a happy ending. G does not have a whole lot of evidence regarding the cash transaction, and is unlikely to get the cash back through the court system. I'm proud beyond words of my boyfriend basically organizing a sting operation, but it breaks my heart that G and her daughter have been conned off of a fresh start. So half justice, I guess. The last one is titled, Break Up With My Sister, Time to Pay. In my family it is just my sister, mum, dad, and me. We live a nice quiet life, when one day my sister got a boyfriend. Now my sister and I don't always act nice to each other, but we care about each other very much, so when she got a boyfriend my whole family got to meet him. He was nice and polite. I thought he was a great guy, and just a heads up, I am 2 years younger than my sister. So after a few months of dating, my sister's boyfriend broke up with her. I was mad and tried to help my sister calm down. After she was finally over him, we got her to go back to school. But what the butthole boyfriend had done while she was away was spread rumors that she had cheated on him and was a slut and whore. This got my blood boiling, so I started planning. Me being 2 years younger, I knew I would have to be smart about how I got my revenge. I started small when I had a free period and butthole boyfriend BHBF from now on did not. I would sneak to his locker and with a small magnet and effort I stuck some pretty obscene photos in his locker that just got worse every time he removed one. This was only step 1. I did this for another few weeks before BHBF finally had tried his own plan by hiding a camera in his locker. Great, perfect. I had planned for this in my school. They have cameras inside the classrooms but not in the hallways. I wanted to make him start accusing people and ruin any chance at someone believing his side of a story. So I got a bunch of my friends to help out. So one of my friends and I look a bit like each other, not a lot but enough to where you would have a hard time telling us apart if you had, say, a bad camera. So my friend wore different clothes than me but brought a pair that was identical to my clothing. We decided to put more of those photos in his locker right in perfect view of his camera, making sure he noticed what kind of clothes we were wearing, and every time he tried to accuse one of us the cameras would validate our store. So he tried to catch us and show the teachers but they blow him off. After all, he made multiple false claims. I had him right where I wanted him. One day after school I confronted him and told him what he had done to my sister. He laughed me off until I asked him if he had looked in his locker recently, and right then it clicked for him. I walked close to him and told him this was only the beginning. That made him mad enough to punch me right square in my face. I was hoping for that. A small crowd of students had come to watch the fight. One of the students had captured the punch on video. BHBF started to yell at me about ruining his life and was about to hit me again, but my dad had taught me how to fight dirty. As he was about to hit me, I kicked him in the crotch, followed by a punch to the gut knocking the wind out of him, and finally a punch to the nose so hard it started bleeding. A teacher showed up soon after to stop the fight. Well, with video evidence and witnesses confirming my side of the story along with BHBF running out of trust with the school staff, they took my side. After all that, I still was not happy. I wanted more, so with all my evidence I took him to court and won. He is now serving time for assault of a minor, and his dream of doing whatever he wanted to have been trashed. After all this, I was finally done. I later told my sister parts of the story, but I am only telling the full story on here. Thanks for listening.